Hello, and welcome back to the Pet Business Wellbeing podcast with me, Nathan Dunleavy. This is the podcast where we talk about the realities of running a pet business, the highs, the challenges, and most importantly, how to look after your well-being whilst you do it. Because running a business should support your life, not consume it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. We have a fantastic guest for season 2, my first guest for season 2 of the podcast, and she's international. It's Melissa McCue-McGrath, Triple M, as I fondly call her. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I get to sit here and talk to my friend Nathan and get all nerdy about dogs. This is gonna be the best morning.
Oh, and it's afternoon for me, so it's like that whole time difference thing going on.
It never causes problems.
No. So you're in Maine in the United States. Yeah,
Correct.
brilliant.
Yes.
So for those listeners or viewers that may not know you yet, please could you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure thing. So I'm Melissa McCue-McGrath. I am a dog trainer and behavior consultant here in the Northeast of the United States. We call it New England as opposed to the Old England. I spent 20 years doing behavior consultations in Boston, Massachusetts. So high rises, dogs with severe anxiety and issues and behavioral problems in very small spaces in a very big city. So that's where I got started in dog training. And then during COVID, my family and I decided to move to Maine, in part because of that urban environment. We had an aspiring EDM DJ living above us, and we were like, we can't do this. Like
Yeah.
this is the final straw. We're out. So we left. We moved to rural Maine. Our next door neighbors are horses, and it's great. Cows and horses on our road, our dirt road that goes to nowhere. So it's a very different environment. Only 2 other people live past us, so we only ever see like 1 or 2 cars a day. We've got
Sounds like heaven.
It is great. The only downside is the ticks. We have so many ticks, and they can
Oh,
transmit disease like Lyme disease, which is a
yeah.
joint and compromised disease. But other than that, it's brilliant. Like, it's just so peaceful. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing. And I also just wrote a book called Misadventures of the World's Okayest Dog Trainer. It's about those 20 years in Boston, essentially, of what it's like
Yeah.
working in cities with dogs.
Perfect. So we're going to be talking all about your new book. I'm so excited. I've got a copy here.
It's so
Um,
shiny.
So shiny it is. I love the color as well. So we're going to be talking all about your new book, but we're also going to be talking about the fascinating invasive species detection study.
Mhm.
So that's exciting. So a couple
Very.
of topics today. Right, Melissa, before we dive into the book itself,
Mhm.
I'd love to start with the story behind it. So, Misadventures of the World's Okayest Dog Trainer is such a brilliant title.
Oh, thank you.
What what inspired you to write the book and what made you decide that now was the right time to share those stories?
Oh, brilliant. I love this question. The first chapters of this book were written in 2015. Actually, most of this book was written in 2015 to 2016, right after like a self-published book I did for dogs in the city called Considerations for the City Dog. So I had this student through the Victoria Stilwell Academy. I'm not sure how big that is over in the UK, but it's huge here in the States. And I
Yeah.
happen to be a faculty advisor for Victoria and have been for about, this is my 11th year.
Wow,
Um, I love training my future colleagues. That's how I look at it. And
lovely.
it's such a gift to be able to do that and have these impressionable students and being able to be part of that journey, because that didn't exist. I don't know about for you, but for me, it certainly didn't exist when I was cutting my teeth on dog training in the early
No,
2000s.
yeah.
Um, and so while my student Zoe was I think she was preparing for her final exam through the VSA Academy, and she asked me, like, what do I need to know for my test? Or what do I need to know going forward? I believe was the exact question. And I was like, well, like, you need to know your learning theory and the animal husbandry stuff. Some of that stuff might trip you up. And she's like, no, 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 not the stuff that I learned in the program. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, what are the things that they didn't tell me? And that's what this book is. And it's like
Right.
kind of teaching like the lessons that we all had to learn without having faculty advisors or without having somebody to like go back to and say, hey, I ran into this problem. There's a hoarding case I just walked into. What do I do?
Yeah.
Or that like I'm in a classroom with second graders and the two puppies are humping each other and now I have to explain this to second graders. Like
Yeah.
it's like all the things that like are not test questions for any of the academies that exist, which are brilliant. And I'm not saying don't go through an academy. Please don't take this as your only learning experience. But like to supplement those learning experiences to kind of give you a behind the scenes of what you and I do on the daily when we're working with dogs, and especially their humans, because they're the real
Yeah.
wild cards.
That's it. Because
Yeah.
so many people get into dog training because they love dogs and they think, oh, it's just going to be working with the dog. But it's not the dog that pays the bill, it's the human. So
Oh, I love
you've got,
that. Yeah.
yeah, you've got to like people, or at least be able to communicate to
Or at
people.
least be really good at pretending you can tolerate humans. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because the dogs are better than the humans, we all know that. But yeah, we definitely need to have some people skills. And I
yeah.
haven't read it yet because it arrived a couple of weeks ago and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But I was reading the introduction and there was a little bit that just tickled me about finding the adult entertainment toy
Okay.
just on the worktop. I mean,
Have you
it,
ever had that happen walking into somebody's home?
not necessarily walking into someone's home, but I have seen it out on walks. Yes. So, yes, we have come across some interesting
That
items.
yeah,
Yeah. But this is the thing, like you're walking into people's personal space and you just
right.
sometimes do not know what you're going to walk into, do you?
Mm-mm. No, no, no. And sometimes like they had either tried to clean up or that usually 9 times out of 10, everything's fine. Nothing goes weird. But sometimes like when you're in the home and they're talking about maybe using a crate or using some sort of confinement for short periods of time, and we're trying to find a good spot for that or trying to find a good spot for the dog or puppy to sleep. And we're like, okay, well, can I see the layout of your bedroom? And they're like, okay. And then you just open the door and we both come to the same realization that this was not a room that was prepared for a contractor to walk in. Like, do you need a minute? You know what? I've seen enough. I think I can make a plan from here and just slowly close the door behind you. Like,
Then once you see it, you can't unsee it. But
no.
obviously, we have to be the professionals that we are.
Yep. You just I think somebody called it like when you work in behavior, there are times where there's either an emergency or something like that that happens and you just become neurologically dead. You just, oh, okay. Well, we're not going to talk about this now. Let's move to another room and just go. Like just pretend it didn't happen and move.
And
Sometimes it's
they're
all you
just
can do.
and they're probably literally dying inside with embarrassment. And obviously,
Mhm.
they quickly impose themselves.
That's right.
But I love it because I was, like I said, was reading part of the introduction. It is a bit of a memoir as well, isn't it? So it's like a
Yeah, it's
guide, but
yeah.
it's a memoir of like your experiences.
Yeah, so it takes there's a couple of threads through it, and the main one is how, at least in the States, dog training has evolved from when I was a child in the 80s, and the very first chapter I describe a level 5 dog bite, and we were blaming the dog, and, like, the
Mhm.
first word of the book is, "Nico was an asshole." Like, Nico was the dog, and then at the very end of the book, after you go through everything essentially that we learn through experience or through these things, I ask the reader to go back and read that chapter again with now the knowledge that they have. And what I'm asking them to do is now look at it and do you think the dog was the asshole? And just kind of it's like the perspective shift that you get through the whole book and understanding how dog bites happen, understanding how dog body language works as best as I could in the written space, how we look at dogs as autonomous beings now instead of as property, even though still legally in the United States, they are still property. We don't have the same kind of laws that exist for protection that exist in the UK. We don't have mandatory microchipping. We don't have, right? So like we do have microchipping. It's not mandatory.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
know that.
right. So like a lot of the laws that you guys have for welfare do not exist here in the States. And
Wow.
I know that there's a lot of people in the UK who are pushing for stronger
We are. Well,
laws
they
and
are,
welfare.
yeah.
And it's so good to see, but just think about what maybe you might consider like little welfare you have. We don't have that here in the same way in many
I s
cases. So it's actually in many ways worse here. I apologize. My phone is beeping. So if you're hearing something on this recording and it goes beep, that was me. I've just turned that off.
Okay, don't
Yeah.
worry.
But
It's
the
all good.
but yeah, so that's the first thread is like just kind of like the journey through like mostly punishment style to more science-based and understanding learning theory and like through ACE free work and things like that that really were not on the table in the same way, and the accessibility of knowledge for good or for bad. Um and then the other track is like just my personal journey. So these are all told through personal stories, but it's really like each chapter is called like your experience with sexism. So like being a woman in this industry,
Mm.
or even just anybody who's not a cis white male in this industry, they are technically the the minority in this group. But there's still a
Yes,
ton of misogyny in dog training on
there
stages.
is.
And I talk about
Yeah.
cases watching doctors, like very, very famous dog trainers in our industry who are women who are being talked down to men on the stage and nobody comes to her defense. And this
Right.
was in my like this was in the early to 2014, I believe, 2013, 2014-ish. And
Mm.
like nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. There were tons of people on that stage. Like and just being able to see it's like, okay, so just because there are more women in this industry than men, it's 89% women as of 2019. But that doesn't mean that we have cured misogyny or like any group where they like in society might not be a majority population. We
Mm.
tend to find our home here really well, which is great. But those more societal issues do still exist. And so people need to be
Mm.
aware of it. So each chapter is called like your experience with sexism. So like you might not have the same story, but like you might know of a female trainer who had something horrible happen to her or has location sharing on her phone with a partner just in case they walk into a home and something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Like so you might know somebody who has that happen to them. So
Mm.
each of the chapter headings is to hopefully get the reader to think about their experience, like their funniest experiences in a home, their first dog bite, their first experiences going through, but I'm talking
Right.
about mine.
Yeah, sure. No, I love that. I absolutely love that. I love someone that's got a story and a journey. I often found like when I was doing a lot of in-person training, for whatever reason, it might have been the couples, whether that be same sex or male or female,
Mhm.
it might be their first dog or they
Oh
might
yeah.
not have children. And there's different parenting styles. And I often found like I was a bit of a counselor or like
Mhm.
a marriage therapy person. Like
Yes.
you often kind of feel like you're in the middle sometimes because there's like these conflicting views of the way the dog should be trained.
Exactly. And like, I think one of the most serious cases that I walked into, it was the one, I think this is the one that I consider like that broke me. I actually went through like a bout of compassion fatigue, funny enough, just before 2020. So like, I'm like, I'm going to take a few months off. And then I ended up taking like 2 years off because of COVID. And
Yeah.
the United States handled it a little differently than the UK. We just shut it all down and never went back. Whereas the UK, my understanding was like shut down for a couple of weeks, then reopen, then shut down, then reopen. So here we just close the door. We're like, it's not here. Like, we don't see it. It's like closing stuff in a closet that you just don't want to see. Like, and
Yes.
then that's pretty much what we did. And so, like, in November of 2019, I'm like, this is my last behavior case for a while because I am burned out. And it was a
Mm.
family it was two people. One was a psychotherapist by profession, And the other, I can't remember what her partner did, but he worked from home. And I walk into the house, they have this partially blind, partially deaf poodle named
Oh,
Bob. And Bob's about,
oh.
he's a little guy. He's so sweet. But like shadows were weird. He was super noise reactive. And they lived across the street from a school. And so I'm sitting in there, I'm trying to come up with ways to like maybe use white noise or some other things in the environment to try to, I don't know, just try to help this dog out, trying to help them work with some desensitization techniques and just trying to enrich his life in different ways. The whole time I am sitting, so they have a couch here, and for the podcast listeners who are not watching this on YouTube, there was like a couch and then an L shape, there was a chair. So we're kind of
Mm.
sitting, like I'm in the corner, one's in the chair to my right, one's in on the couch on my left, and the two of them just start screaming at each other like, you did this, you did that, you never do this, you never listen to me. And I'm just sitting there like, what is happening? They are standing up and screaming over my
Wow.
head. This is a therapist. Like, and so
I,
I'm looking at these two and I'm looking at the dog and he's like being like, it looked like he was being electrically shocked. And I'm like,
oh,
guys,
oh
look at
gosh.
your dog. And they were like,
Mhm.
oh no. And then they kind of calmed down for a minute and it was like right back up again. And I'm like, I can't get through to you. Like, I can't help your dog because you are not here for
Mm.
your dog. You are here for yourselves right now. And so I wrote them, I think, the longest behavior plan I have ever written a client. I
Mm.
went back 2 weeks later. They had done none of it. None of it. And the dog was still suffering. And they're like, great, can we see you again? I'm like, absolutely not. I'm like, when you guys can get through some of this, I will happily come back. But I can't, I'm not rewriting this again. Like, unless you're
Mm.
going to like, and this was kind of like when I realized I'm like, I came at them really hard, but they also weren't hearing anything else. And I'm like, I need a break. Because
Not
and then
surprised.
I took it, and then the universe said, you need a longer break.
Yeah.
Like,
Take, oh, I have 2 months. Take 2 years.
I've just come back in 22. It'll be fine. Just move house, and then go to the country,
Re
and then pick this up.
yeah, reevaluate, restock. Brilliant. I love that. Thank you. Was there a particular moment in your career where you realized actually these experiences might really resonate with other dog trainers, pet professionals, or new people to the industry?
I think it was when I think there were 2 moments, and they were kind of back to back. And the first was when Zoe, my student, was asking, "What do I need to know?" And then I was thinking back to some of these stories, like when, like, people like you and me would, like, sit down, just, like, have a margarita or 2 and, like, talk about, like, all the weird stuff that we had seen in the industry, maybe even just that week. And then you know
Yeah,
how you tell a story and then somebody else tells one and then it, like,
it's the
springboards
domino
into something
effect.
else. Yeah, and if you get a bunch of us together, we're telling those stories. So that's what I realized, okay, I think I have a collection. But what the other one was actually a woman who started off as my hero and is now a very dear friend of mine, Patricia McConnell. Um,
Yes.
I had I told this story on this podcast, Barks from the Bookshelf, a long time ago,
Yeah.
but we famously met in the most hilarious of ways. And if there's time, I can go back and tell that story. But like we meet, hilarity ensues. She invites me out to her house in Wisconsin, and I go. Um, and like nervous and like excited. And it was, I don't think I've laughed so hard in my life. Like we both
Mm.
left that weekend, like with a 6-pack abs situation from laughing. And one moment I'm in the car with her and she's showing me like some nature thing. And we're sitting in this car. And then she just turned to me and says, you have to keep writing. And I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay, okay. If if you say so. Like,
Yeah.
so it wasn't like a longtime friend who was like, "Yeah, you should do this," and, like, just being supportive or my partner or something. This is a woman that I had just essentially had just met who was in this
Mm.
industry who is, I mean,
Amazing.
it's Trisha McConnell. We all know
Yeah.
who she is, and if you don't, my god, please look her up. Like, I call her the mother of positive reinforcement training because, like, she really made all of the the science juju stuff, super relatable. Not just for
Yeah.
people who wanted to work with dogs, but or any animal truly, but for people who had dogs and were just curious and just wanted to know a different way or just wanted to read what it was like in the mind of a behaviorist or a trainer.
Yeah.
And she's just got this beautiful picturesque writing style that is just so digestible for anyone.
Yeah.
And so when she just turned to me in like her little Subaru and said that, I was like, "Okay, I don't have enough room in this car to pass out, so I guess I'll just do that instead."
Yeah. I love that. And
Yeah,
I saw a lovely post, I think it might have been yesterday, she shared with about you and the book and
I
stuff.
just
How
adore her.
amazing.
She she exemplifies women supporting women in a way that a lot
Mm.
of other people might say it as lip service and not do it. Um,
Ah,
she
okay.
genuinely walks the walk. She wants people to be successful. She is not an idiot. She knows that she has this massive platform and anything she puts
Mm.
out there could be ripped apart, but she's got such a supportive group of probably hundreds of thousands of people who are following her, who are picking up her words, who she is influencing every day just by being her.
Mm.
And for her to like when she picks up somebody's book like Kat Warren's book or maybe even like a lesser known trainer or like mine, like most people don't know who I am. For her to pick that up and offer it to her flock of
Yeah.
people, it
Amazing.
it's so it's so good. It's really just
Yeah.
women supporting women, and she walks that walk, and she talks the talk, and she's just amazing, and I just love her on every plane imaginable. She's just such a wonderful person.
I love that because, like you say, a lot of people talk the talk, but when it comes to it, they don't walk the walk. And I'm big on like collaboration and
Yeah.
supporting each other. And it was a lovely post, and it must be even more an amazing feeling for you just to experience that.
She had
Um,
texted me how many people had seen, like, this, like, little video that she had put out there, and I just, like, sent her back, like, this gif of, like, Elmo fainting. Like,
yeah,
we were talking about how, like, if we started a punk band, it would be called the Fainting Elmos.
yeah. Oh, I love. Have you ever seen? There's something like fainting goat. Like
Yes!
the yes, that's
Yes!
yeah. I've seen like because I'm someone in the UK like their marketing business was called FG Marketing, but it was standard. It stood for fainting goat. If you've ever seen
No.
a fainting goat,
They just basically, the amygdala hijack happens, but, like,
yeah.
their brain just goes, "Blue screen of death," and they just go, like
Melissa, this podcast is all about the person behind the business and obviously your well-being. And when you're running your business, we need to look after ourselves to be the best version for our colleagues, clients, family, the dogs we serve. So writing a book must have been, well, it is a big project. I know it is because I haven't done it yet and I will come on to that in a minute, but I know friends and colleagues that have. But what was that process like alongside running a business?
Oh, man. Um, that is a fantastic question. So, I guess I'll back up and say my first one I think my first book will kind of impact how the second one went. So the first one, I had an infant daughter, and I had time when she would nap
Mhm.
because she was a hero sleeper, and everyone who's ever had a baby hates me now. It's like
Oh,
because she was picky in other ways, but sleeping was not a problem for her. So, like, I would put her down for, like, a 2-hour nap, and she would sleep for 2 hours, and I'd be like, "Oh, I thought this was gonna be the hard part." So, I would take old blog articles that I had written to kinda help support my urban students, or I would just start writing, like, a chapter, and then I would go back and work on it, work on it, work on it, and then I would
mm.
once I had enough together, I kinda put it together in a book, and I sent it out to a bunch of people to look over, like, "Is this readable?" I had some friends who are way more honest than others, and I am so appreciative of them for it. And others who are like, "It's perfect." I'm like, "No, That's nice. Okay. And then others who are just like, oh no, this sentence doesn't read right. Could you rephrase this or could you do something else here? This is repetitive, whatever the case was. So like that was happening while my kid was sleeping. So that book
Mm,
was like created and done in a 2-year window and self-published. This
mm,
one, I kind of did a similar thing, although this kid was 2015, so she was in school at this point. So she had 4 to 6 hours where she was gone.
okay.
And when we had started school, like she was also like suffering from some panic attacks and some things like that. So like either me or my husband would have to be accessible in case something happened. So it was me. So like he could work and my work was a lot more flexible, but I had fewer hours that I had to be in a location. So being
Mm,
able to do virtual stuff with Victoria Stilwell Academy or being and meet my students that way,
yeah.
and having that flexibility was helpful, but also having the same flexibility for being able to write. And so I think that part of it, it was more therapeutic for me instead of a hindrance. That I think was the thing that was keeping me going. And I think I mentioned I have a chapter on compassion fatigue in there and talk about
Yeah.
like what are the signs of it? What does this look like? What does it feel like? And most of us don't realize we're in it until hopefully we get through it and then we look back and we're like, "Oh, that's what that was."
Yeah.
'Cause you're
Yeah.
drowning and all you can think of is, "I need to get to the surface for air," and then somebody's
Mm,
trying to label it at you, and you're like, "No, no, this isn't that. I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. You're not
yeah.
fine." And I think a lot of the more anxiety or stress-related impacts to us,
Mm,
either as business owners or humans, we
mm,
tend to think of these convenient labels, but when you are in it, postpartum depression is another. It's like, "No, I'm fine. I'm getting up in the morning, I'm feeding my kid, I haven't hit her, so I'm not depressed." Right?
yeah.
Um, so, like, we don't recognize it until we're healthy, and then we're like, "Oh, no. I was in a bad place."
Yeah.
That was the bad place.
Yeah.
And so being able to write about it was super therapeutic and I think helpful, and I hope it helps others.
But well,
So,
definitely.
yeah,
I
that's
love
the
that.
bad part of our industry, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what a lot of my mentoring work's all about now. The
Mhm.
person behind the business and your well-being. And I was burnt out. I suffer with severe anxiety and PTSD, and
Yeah.
I'm awaiting an ADHD assessment. I'm pretty much sure I am. But
Welcome
yeah,
to the team, buddy. High five.
yeah, like we are empaths, and I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm sensitive, I'm emotional, but as pet professionals, we are empaths. We give a lot,
Yeah.
and and then that's when the burnout creeps in, the boundaries, the compassion fatigue. A lot of us struggle with that.
I think of in the way you said that it kinda creeps in, it makes me think so my daughter does art, and there's sometimes she'll draw something, and she might it and if you if you're older and you ever had to do Microsoft Paint, even on that program, but let's say you draw a
But
circle. If this is bringing back, like, I've unlocked some memories, like a sleeper agent for some of your listeners. But let's say you draw, like, a circle and you wanna color the circle. Let's say I wanna color it blue, but if I don't fully close it and you hit blue, the whole thing becomes blue, the whole page, right? And so when Ace, my daughter, like, draws, like, a human and she misses one piece and then, like, the whole person is purple instead of, like, just the color of the vest that she wants. That's what I think of as compassion fatigue. It just or any of these mental health emergencies. You think you're containing it, but it's
Mm,
really saturating everything on the page, and you have
mm,
to close it off and manage it and get it back so that way you can have a manageable amount of purple, like, which might be your emotional cup being too filled or not full enough or anxiety or panic attacks or depression or whatever it is, like, the manageable, part of it
mm,
is a small piece, but when it gets out of control, it literally covers everything on the page.
Mm, mm,
Um, I,
yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. No, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure it will resonate. Brilliant. Thank you. I love chatting to you. So before we move on to our next topic, but people say that I've got a book in me. A few people have said it now. On a couple off air, I was saying like I'm doing too much. Like I don't have the time. I maybe will one day. I just don't have the time at the moment. There's other priorities. But a couple of people I interviewed on the Yappy Hour, my other podcasts, like they said, "Oh, you've definitely got a book in you." I'm a baby. I've only been in the industry 8 years, so but I have lived a very interesting and varied life. But that with like what I've learned so far in the industry, I think I could do some sort of memoir type style book.
Yeah. And we don't have many in training and behavior. Um,
Mm.
Kat Warren had hers, and that was more about like this one facet of having this solo puppy that was not getting socialized appropriately, and like all the statistics about how those things can go bad. And her journey, not as a trainer per se, but as a trainer for this individual dog and working with this individual dog to find cadavers and to find historic human remains.
Mm.
It's a fantastic book. It might not be the most relatable for dog trainers, but I find it absolutely fascinating. Um, Patricia McConnell has her Education of Will, but that one's about trauma and overcoming traumatic experiences from her vantage point, and also handling it with animals and her dog Will.
Mm. Mm.
The Education of Will is the name of that book. And then like you've got a couple of others, but most of the like behind the scenes, here's my impression of what's going on books that exist solely in that realm are veterinarians. You've got Nick Trout, who did Tell Me Where It Hurts, which I love that book. There's Philip Schott, who has just, I think he's in Canada. He's got a bunch of like essays about what it's like being a vet about a particular case. So each one is like a little case study. There's no connective tissue. So it's like just read this chapter, read this chapter, read this chapter. But like it does give you a peek behind the curtain. There's really not a lot that is just that. Here's what it's like in this industry for us,
Yeah.
for training and behavior in especially the canine world. You get snippets
Yeah.
of it as people write their books because of course, like you want to like if you're writing it, you're putting some of you in there, right? Like
Yeah.
you're putting it in there, but that might not be the overarching story. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, but
Yeah.
for vets, they're a dime a dozen and they're all very good. I love reading like
Yeah.
vet memoirs because they're just it's like almost all of
Fascinating.
them have the story where they find the underwear in the dog and they show it to the partner and they're like, that's not my underwear. So then a divorce occurs. Like
Oh
they almost
gosh.
all have that story. But yeah, it's great. And I would love to read more about what other people experience in this industry.
Yeah. I think we need it, warts and all. But yeah, maybe one day I've chatted to Jay Gurdon. She runs a writers mentoring group, so she's trying to tap me up as well. And yeah, I think I will one day.
Yeah.
Maybe in a few years. I won't put myself
Even
any pressure.
even just to start sketching and just writing, like most of the chapters in both of my books came from blog entries that I had written over the years and just kind of
Yeah.
writing the connective tissue around it to make it a book. But I think having, as things come up, writing it down just so you can remember. And then
Mm.
as time goes on, either it's a book or it's not, but you still have it out there. And when people are asking you questions, you could send them that link and say, "Hey, this was my experience when I had to deal with deciding if I was going to put my dog on medication, like behavioral
Yeah.
modification medication or not. Like these are the
Yeah.
questions that I felt that I needed to ask and answer, and this is what was happening, and this is my decision tree." And like
Mm.
being able to do some things like that can be very, very helpful and again, therapeutic just to get it out
Mm.
regardless if it's gonna be intended for other people to consume it or not. It is a therapy, and it's fantastic, and I think you should do it.
All right, watch this space. Okay, Melissa, I'd love to move on to our second topic that I've been really looking forward to chatting to you about. So, a fascinating part of your work is the invasive species detection study. So, you were doing this in Maine, but it is national. So, it's where dogs are helping detect spotted lanternflies. So, for listeners who might not know about this work, could you tell us about how the dogs are trained to detect invasive species and why this research is so important, please?
Oh, sure. I could talk about these dogs for days. So in 2014, the United States received some shipping containers that had two invasive species in it. One was the tree of heaven, which, if I recall correctly, it's an invasive tree from Asia that I think were being sold in places like Home Depot, which is like a big box store where you can go get gardening supplies or home
Mhm.
improvement stuff.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to pretty up their lawn, they could, or garden, they could get some of these trees and just plant them. But it's
Mm.
an invasive tree here. And so that became a problem very quickly. And who was hitchhiking on that tree is the, I think, bigger problem. Like it's a beautiful fly. I'll actually, for those on YouTube can see this, that's the bug. It's got these
Yes.
It's got these scarlet bottom wings with black tips, and then the top wing, if you're picturing like a butterfly, you've got the bottom wing, and you got the top wings, which are bright white with black lines and dots through it. It's a gorgeous little murder bug. And what it does is it is unlike a lot of invasive species that have one host that it likes to eat off of. So here we have another invasive called the emerald ash borer. The little green beetle, also a gorgeous bug. It's like bright green, think like Emerald City emeralds, like sparkly,
Mm.
gorgeous, another murder bug. That one goes into ash trees and only ash trees, and it destroys them.
Mm.
The spotted lanternfly is what they call an indiscriminate layer and lazy breeder, which rude, but it will feed off of almost anything. It loves the tree of heaven, but it will also eat off of hardwood, off of stone fruit like plums and apricot, apples, apple trees,
Oh.
vineyards, so like wine grapes, which makes me so sad, hops, if you like beer, um,
Yeah.
maple trees, you name it, it will feed off of that. What makes it particularly dangerous is that it has this substance called honeydew, which is this sweet, sticky substance that it uses to either vomit onto the host tree to like kind of plug up where it was eating from, or to cover their baby eggs. And so they'll vomit that up, cover their eggs with it, and then that
Right.
dries and it looks like mud or like a smear of like concrete, like a very neutral color.
Mm.
And it's sweet, so it attracts black mold. That's the part that's problematic. That will wipe out
Oh,
entire crops. So
right.
when it gets to Maine, and it is predicted to be here this year, it can take out up to 70 different crops in the state of Maine.
My
This is
gosh.
very, very bad. We're a very ecologically based state. A lot of our industry is related to the environment,
Mm.
whether it's lumbering or harvesting or crops. We're in a lot of trouble when this gets here. So these two universities, Texas Tech in Texas, which is about halfway across our country, and Virginia Tech, which is on the eastern seaboard, decided that they were going to team up and try to figure out a way if we could train pet dogs, like my dog captain or your dogs, to find these invasive species on their walks, the nightly walks. So if I, as a pet dog trainer, can train my pet dog handlers to find these invasives, we might be able to stop the invasion or at least slow it down a bit. And
Right.
so they put out a call to action. About, I think, 2,000 people listened to their introduction webinar. I can't remember, I think 1,800 people submitted to either be a trainer or a participant as a student learning from a trainer.
Mm.
They ultimately picked 180 teams, 150 people. So some of those people had two dogs in the study.
Right.
And I was one of the trainers they tapped, and I had 5 students assigned to me, and they were all my students that I already knew. So
Oh,
I was already
okay.
super lucky because not everybody had that. Some people
Right.
signed up to be a trainer, and they had strangers that were assigned to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So all of
Wow.
my dogs, what they were really looking for, this is the fun part, and this is why Victoria Stillwell wanted me to present at her dog behavior conference.
Yes, which you've just done, yeah.
Yeah. That was a highlight. But what I will say is it wasn't that we were just have to do this study. They wanted National Association of Canine Scent Work, so NASCW, NACSAW dogs, super highly competitive dogs, or dogs who were retired from doing real work, like finding bad guys or drugs or whatever, and seeing if they could
Mm,
train those dogs using pet dog techniques to find these lanternfly. I had
mm,
6 behavior cases. I actually had 5 behavior cases and 1 who was not. They all had behavior plans, they all had things, they all had some funky thing going on with them, and we were like, and we didn't have the invasion here, and I've never done a trial. I've never done a scent work trial on any of my dogs. So I'm like,
mm.
there's no way we're gonna be picked. Then they picked us. So it was us, and so Victoria kept calling us, like, the ragtag team or, like, the bad news bears, and, like and that was true, like, we were really trying to figure out how to do this, and we were given the assignment in the winter time. The first group went through in the summer to fall. We in Maine, if you don't know much about US geography, Maine is the northeast corner, and we are known for epic snowstorms and blizzards. We even have a very fancy storm called a nor'easter. It's a northeaster, and it's very common and only really in the northeast of the states, where Amtrak will be going up the eastern seaboard and it's spinning the backwards, not forwards. It's spinning backwards, picking up ocean water and spinning it back into our state. And that's where we get a ton of our snow, and we can get feet of snow at a time. And they were like, you guys trained for this in the middle of winter.
Blimey.
So we did, and they gave us 10 weeks. It took us 10 months to get all of the data, almost all of it due to weather. But we did. We finally submitted our stuff, and we were able to give supportive data to the theory that we could do this. And it seems like the first paper and only paper to my knowledge is out, but it is showing strong indication that yes, pet dogs can be taught to find these invasives in a controlled setting, which I think is a very important distinction. And I have gone from having 6 dogs that we put through the study to 25 dogs at at my dog training center at the Animal Welfare Society, which is a shelter, a functioning animal shelter. We now have 25 dogs who can do it. Yeah,
Wow, that's amazing.
it's so fun.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. It's a unique application of scent detection. So, was there anything that personally drew you into it? Was it just because you wanted to get involved with, the study and the research and because it was going to be
So,
such a problem?
yeah, the thing that really did it for me, I just thought it was so cool to even try.
Yeah.
But the way I found out about it was I if you say you have your ADHD test out, if you would relate to this story, I am not a medical doctor, I am not a therapist, I'm not a psychotherapist, but I would say it's probably more likely than not that you do. So I had this little podcast called Bewilder Beasts from 2020 until 2024. And it was about all the
Okay.
intersections at animals at humanity. So like what is the origin of seeing eye dogs? What did we train bees to find bombs in Croatia, which we've done? What there are 2 libraries, I believe in France, that use bats to make sure that they go out every night and eat all the bugs that could destroy like the very archaic paper. So they have housed bats in these libraries. So like all
Wow.
little stories like that I can see your face. You're as into it as I was. So one of the stories was about the spotted lanternfly and these bees in Pennsylvania. So remember I told you that shipping crate came into Pennsylvania. That was where the invasion started. And this is
Right.
how we found out we had an invasion. These honey in Pennsylvania started coming out super dark, looking almost like motor oil, and it was
Oh.
tasting very smoky. And the apiarists, are people who have bees, could not figure out what was going on. And they're like, okay, it's got an odd taste. We haven't died, so let's sell it. And so they did. In the meantime, they had submitted samples to scientists who were trying to break down the compounds and figure out exactly what was being added to this honey from the bees. It turns out, remember that sweet vomitous substance that I was talking about that attracts black mold? Turns out it also attracts bees. And so bees were taking that honeydew and putting it in the honey. And that's what made it sweet. And that's what made it smoky and super dark. It was safe to
Wow.
eat. They called
Yeah.
it doom bloom because once they found out what it was, that it was like from this invasive that was terrorizing Pennsylvania and has since gotten out. So they called it doom bloom. I have purchased it. I have eaten it, and it is delicious if you are not thinking about how it is made. Like, great on a nice English muffin. Um, but yeah, and so I had told that story on the podcast. A
Okay.
listener who had some connections at one of these two universities emailed me a couple months later and said, "Hey, you remember that story about the spotted lanternfly and the honey? These researchers are trying to find out about like if dogs could detect them. And I think you said you were a dog trainer. So here's this cool study." I think she was just going to have me do a story on it.
Mhm.
But then I realized I hadn't started the study yet and I could apply. So I did that instead. Oh, yeah, that was how I got into it.
I absolutely love that. It's just so it's just so random, but then that's
Yes, like,
that's bloody
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, I loved it. It was so fun, like
No,
and
brilliant.
then I get to talk
Uh,
about that, like, weird honey, like,
wow, I mean, it's definitely a conversation starter. Do you think projects like this help people see dogs' abilities in a completely different light, Melissa?
I do, because and I can say this anecdotally, so N of one person, but I have people coming in to my classes with Tigger the tiger on amphetamines as a doodle going, "I want him to be a therapy dog," but I and now they're like, "He doesn't have to be a therapy dog. He can find invasive species."
Mm,
And so people are looking at this as a way for their dogs to be engaged, to potentially help the environment. Those 6
mm,
dogs that went through the process of learning how to find spotted lanternfly, all of those handlers are super proud of their dogs, and they have, like, this, like it makes them a little puffy. They get to say, "My dog can do this cool thing." And especially since most of them were behavior cases, having like, when you have a dog who is reactive, overreactive, aggressive, shut down, whatever the case might be, can't go into a new
mm,
environment. You're always looking at supporting that dog, but like, and also that owner. And that
mm,
takes a lot out of us. But there's a lot of like trying to lift, like, there's nothing wrong with your dog. Your dog is perfect. Your dog is great. It's just a little quirky. We
mm,
just need to try to help support and like taking them from this excitement of, I have a new dog and I'm going to a dog park and I'm going to go make all these dog friends and we're going to have dog play dates. And then you can't even say hi to another dog, or you can't even like have people over your house because your dog can't handle strangers, whatever the case might be. Now these people have something that they can look at and say, my dog can do this. And it
yeah,
changes their entire outlook. It changes how they can see. Maybe less so for most of my handlers because they've been around, they've been doing other things as well. But I guarantee for some of my other students who have been coming in that are just behavior cases that were not part of the study, and they're just like, "Can we do this invasive species thing?" I'm like, "Well, when you get to level 3, we'll introduce it as an odor." And they're like, "Okay." So that gives them a target goal, and they're super invested. They have a thing that they want to do with
yeah,
their dog who can't go into a hospital, right? Or their dog who can't go down the street at all, or the dog who might actually be really good in a hospital if it could just calm down for 6 seconds. It's it's gonna be the dog that pulls out IVs because it's just so happy to be there. Might be the wrong personality for that environment, but being able to say, "My dog can do this," instead of looking at all the quirks or all the things that somebody might see as a negative, they have this cool
Mm.
positive, and it has changed the outlook on them, and it's really, really fun to see.
Wow, fascinating. I love it. And thank you so much for like just telling us more about it, Melissa. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Before we start bringing the episode to a close and start wrapping up, I'd love to zoom out a little and ask you if there's one message you hope dog trainers, pet professionals, or anyone working in the pet industry takes away from your amazing book
Mm.
and your journey, what would that message be?
I think it would be things are changing for the better. It might not seem that way on any given day, but out it is undeniable that we have better access for people who want to work with animals to be able to work with them.
Mm,
Kids have way better opportunities to be able to engage with their pets in safe ways instead
mm,
of ways that might put them in harm's way. And while there is a flood of bad information out there, there's also good information out there too. Um,
mm,
and it's not impossible to find your way in the way that feels good in your heart to do this work if that's what you want to do. Or if you
mm,
have these pets, if you have a pet who needs a little extra support or needs a little extra help, there's so many good resources out there.
mm,
And again, like we were both talking about the law earlier and like how like in the States, like dogs are property, pets are property, like we just don't have the same kind of protections for a lot of our animals right now, but it is still getting better and we have advocates. So if something doesn't feel right to you, then it probably isn't. And don't be gaslit by somebody telling you it is fine.
mm,
You can find resources that will support that tickling, nagging feeling that something's wrong.
mm.
You don't have to override it, and you can find good support to help you through it. That's what I hope people take.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Melissa, I got to meet you in person by chance because you were in the UK at the PAT conference, what, 3 years ago, 2023?
23, yeah.
Yeah, nearly 3 years ago. I got to meet you in person. I absolutely adore you. You're brilliant. You're absolutely amazing. And I'm really thankful that you took the time to come on the podcast with me today. If our listeners or viewers would like to find out more about you, how can they reach you, please?
Sure. So I'm the only Melissa McCue-McGrath anywhere. So you can, I'm pretty easy to find if you just Google it. I have a website, melissamcquemcgrath.com. You can hopefully in the UK, you can get the book through 5M Publishing,
Okay.
who was also at that same conference and many conferences in the UK for dog lovers and professionals. And, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, like I'm around. It's not that hard to find me. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say I just adore you and everything that you do for animals and for their people and for professionals out there that are just needing a little bit of support. You're always a ray of sunshine. Whenever I open up social media and I get to see my friend Nathan, it just makes my day better. So thank you for all that you do and keep doing it.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so lovely. Thank you for saying that. I'm going to put all your links and details in the show notes. But Melissa McCue-McGrath, Triple M, thank you so much for joining me on the Pet Business Wellbeing podcast with me, Nathan Dunleavy. I've absolutely loved chatting with you today.
Big love.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Pet Business Wellbeing podcast with me, Nathan Dunleavy. If you enjoyed today's chat, I'd love it if you could share this with a friend, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and please consider leaving me a review. It really helps me reach more pet professionals who need this kind of support. Until next time, take care of yourself, look after your well-being, And remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about building a business you actually enjoy being in. Bye for now.